She is constantly posting about her grief. She's really open about how much she's missing Liam.
But I think there's times where she's crossed that line.
Kate Cassidy posted something which I thought was very bizarre and distasteful, really. She was accused of tormenting the late star's family by doing this.
I think it'd be fair to say that Kate has cashed in on Liam and his death.
In September 2024, Liam Payne of One Direction and his girlfriend, Kate Cassidy, they've been dating for 2 years. They decided to go to Buenos Aires. Now, they were there because they wanted to support Liam's bandmate of One Direction, Niall Horan. He was performing in Buenos Aires. And on October the 2nd, we've actually got footage of Liam clearly having a very good time dancing and mixing with the fans there. And after that, they decided they were going to stay in Argentina, him and Kate, and they did. And while he was there, he applied for his US visa. Now, this would mean that he could go back to Miami where they had a home. Instead, he had issues with that. We don't really know what those issues were related to, but it stopped him immediately going back to the US, and he stayed in Buenos Aires. But on October the 12th, Kate Cassidy left. She wanted to go back to the US, which left Liam Payne alone in Argentina.
She left Liam in Buenos Aires a few days before he died, and she's come under enormous scrutiny for that. And she went back to care for their dog. I think she said she was homesick. And that as well is another thing that perhaps doesn't sit quite right with the family, and certainly not with his friends. They believe she should have been there at the end, and quite why she left when he clearly was in such a state. It's hurtful to them. It's another one of those unanswered questions about his death, and had she been there, would he still be alive? Obviously, we don't know that.
So Liam was somebody who had struggled with alcohol and drug issues since rising to fame in One Direction. It was clearly something which he turned to cope with the anxieties he had around fame. And when Kate left him alone in Argentina, sadly, he relapsed. He was drinking heavily, and he had managed to acquire drugs, which he was also taking very heavily. And in those 4 days before his death, he was using drugs very intensely. In fact, so much so that on October the 16th, he was seen acting very erratically in the hotel. He smashed up his laptop. He was having bizarre interactions with fans, which we have footage of. And his violent ways in the hotel, smashing up the laptop, caused hotel staff to call the police. Police were called and said, he's in his hotel room, and were worried about his safety. But sadly, by 5:04 p.m. on the 16th of October, he fell to his death from that third-floor balcony and died tragically at the age of 31. So yes, he was using substances at the time of his death. His autopsy confirmed that he had been taking pink cocaine, which is kind of a dirty mix which usually contains MDMA, meth and ketamine. He was also smoking crack cocaine, and also was found that he had benzos in his system, as well as huge amounts of alcohol.
Liam's death could not have been more tragic. We know that he suffered in his final years. He suffered from being extremely unhappy and drug addiction. And I think what is perhaps making it more difficult here with Kate's constant appearances on social media is that the family feel his death could have been avoided. They really do. And there are so many unanswered questions. There was no foul play, but there are people that could have been there. There are people that could have saved him. If circumstances had been different, he may still be alive today. And I think that is something that plays on Liam's loved ones so much, while Kate is out there telling us how fabulous her life is, and sometimes how sad her life is, and reminding everybody that she was Liam's girlfriend.
And now these were taken in the days following Liam's death. They're the first images we have of Kate Cassidy. She's clearly grief-stricken. They had an intense 2-year relationship before his death. I think what was quite interesting about their relationship was very much an American-based relationship. She spent a lot of time in America. Liam spent a lot of time with her in America, but she had never actually met his British family. She'd never met his parents or his sisters. And when you compare that to, say, his ex, Cheryl was obviously a big part of his family because they were brought together by the fact that they had a son in Bear.
For the last 2 or 3 years, Liam had very little contact with his mum, Karen, his father, Jeff, and his 2 sisters, Nicola and Ruth. He kind of lived this very separate life with Kate, and they lived in Miami. He rented a home there. They just got themselves a little dog. I think he took himself away on purpose. He obviously had little Bear, his son, living with Cheryl up in Buckinghamshire. I feel like he just kind of didn't want to accept that was there, and just was kind of putting it out of his mind, and just wanted to be away from it all, and just get away from it all, and live an almost like solitary life. It was almost like he didn't perhaps want them to know quite how unhappy he was.
Obviously, following the death of her long-term boyfriend, she must have been grieving heavily, and she's been sharing that grief often online with her fans. But that's quite striking, because it's not something which Liam's parents and Cheryl have been doing. They've been very much private, keeping their feelings to themselves. Where Kate, she's going out there and she's saying exactly how she feels and how grief-stricken she is. And some people have pointed out that while she's doing that, she is, of course, gaining a lot of numbers on social media.
Jeff and Karen literally are probably the most normal people you could meet. They hated the fact that Liam was living this life, this famous life. Like Jeff, for example, all he wanted to do was take his son to the pub and buy him a pint. But Liam had lived this life that Jeff from Wolverhampton could absolutely not comprehend. What they didn't ever envisage was that he was going to become part of this boy band that were bigger than the Beatles. I mean, there was one year when One Direction, I think, had something like 160 gigs in 1 year. And it was this world tour where they were away, they were staying in hotels. They couldn't leave their hotel rooms because they had these fans outside. It was terrifying for them. And I think Liam found that really, really difficult. But as did his family, who just couldn't understand this new life that he'd had. He was just this young lad. I mean, he wanted to go to university. That was what, and in fact, some years later, he did concede that he wished he'd gone to university. That's what his friends were doing. And that was the kind of normal life that he yearned. And I think because he came from this such normal family, that even he found it too much.
So while the family were at home organising the funeral, Kate was left alone with her family in America. She didn't have any part to play in the funeral, unlike Cheryl, who was helping the Payne family. Instead, Kate was sharing these heartbreaking love letters, which Liam had written to her, saying they were going to be together forever and that he hoped to marry her. She shared those with her Instagram following and got a huge amount of support from both his fans and hers.
I think the problem with her and the Payne family is that there's no connection. So of course, she told us all after Liam died that they were going to get engaged and that he wanted to marry her, but there was no engagement. There, of course, there was no marriage. There were no children. There's a dog that she has with her now, still in Miami. So there isn't that connection. I think as well, like, they're extremely different people. I think the difference between Kate and Cheryl is that deep down, Cheryl doesn't want to be famous. Cheryl has got no desire to post her life all over social media. We never see Cheryl on social media. We've only ever seen the back of Bear's head. She wants her privacy. Kate wants to live her life, in the public domain. So I think Cheryl and the Payne family have a lot more in common than Kate and the Payne family are ever going to have. And of course, there's the Bear connection. So we saw on the anniversary of Liam's death, we saw his sister Ruth post. And it was, oh gosh, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes, this post. It was so emotional and lovely. And it was very heartfelt. And she rarely posts about her brother. I think she posted about him on his birthday, the last time. And then you've got Kate, who's just flooding her social media with it. So I don't think there'll ever be any relationship there because there's nothing to bring them together.
It must have been incredibly difficult for Kate Cassidy. She returned to the UK and was actually staying in Liam's flat in central London and attended the funeral. And after the funeral, Liam's parents, Jeff and Karen, and his sister Nicola and Ruth, asked Kate to leave the flat. She was slung out, you can see here in these pictures, her with her suitcase. She looks grief-stricken.
After Liam died, Kate flew back to London. I don't think she quite knew what to do with herself. And he had a property in London, in central London, where she went. His family weren't too happy about that, and they asked her to leave. So we then see what appeared to be very staged photographs of her leaving with her suitcases, clutching a cuddly toy as she got into a taxi. Was she paid? Was she not paid? But you look at some sets of pictures and you have to question whether there's been a sort of setup. And I would take a guess that on that occasion it was.
I think what's really striking about Kate Cassidy in the months, in fact, the whole year since Liam's death, compared to, say, Liam's parents and Cheryl, is she is constantly posting about her grief. She's really open about how much she's missing Liam. And some fans have pointed out just kind of how famous she's got since Liam's death.
I definitely think she's more famous now than when Liam was alive, because she was always kind of like Liam's girlfriend, whereas now she's Liam's grieving girlfriend. And my word, like, is there a day when she's not on a social media platform? Of course she's allowed to do that. Like, you know, of course, it's really normal for a girl, a young woman of her age, to be on social media. But I think there's times where she's crossed that line. There's been times where she really should have stopped and thought about, his family is so different to her. They don't want to be famous. They don't want the public persona that she wants. I think it'd be fair to say that Kate has cashed in on Liam and his death. So what was always really interesting with One Direction was that any woman that went out with a member of One Direction used to get hounded on social media. I mean, we all remember when Caroline Flack dated Harry Styles, you know, she got absolutely obliterated on Twitter. That was back in the days of Twitter/X. But actually what's been quite nice, and probably is very comforting for Kate, is that some of his fans, they're genuinely happy to see these pictures and they thank her. So thank you so much for sharing these memories of Liam. So I think they liked, you know, real Liam's true fans actually do like to see that. So I think perhaps fair to say that she is bringing people some joy there.
Now we come to the day of Liam's funeral, and you can just see here how central Cheryl was to that day. She had helped organising it. She really was the central figure. We, of course, as well have his One Direction bandmates there, but Cheryl was the one who kind of smoothed over the tensions with Liam and his ex-bandmates. And in fact, what I think is so striking about Katie's piece here is that Kate Cassidy's not even mentioned. This was very much a day for Liam's family, for Cheryl, for Bear and his bandmates.
Yeah, it was really interesting at the funeral because Cheryl was there. Cheryl was really involved in the organisation of this funeral. Cheryl doesn't like to come out into public life anymore. You know, she was hurt by this industry. She was hurt by her relationship with her marriage to Ashley Cole. He cheated on her. She was hurt by how she was treated by Simon Cowell on The X Factor. And she just, after she had Bear, she just took herself away. And she rarely goes out into public life now. And then you've got Kate, who turned up at the funeral, very much a sideshow, because this was the one day that Cheryl decided she was going to own it. And she was the kind of, if you like, big dog at the funeral. You know, she was extremely supportive. She has been extremely supportive to Jeff and Karen and Liam's sisters. She's made sure that Bear sees his cousins. You know, she's become this real intrinsic part of the Payne family. Whereas Kate, the first time she met the Payne family was at Liam's funeral, where she turned up on the arm of Damien Hurley, Liz Hurley's son. Everyone was like, whoa, hang on, how are they friends? And so, as we've seen over the past year, Cheryl has completely stayed out of the limelight, whereas we've seen Kate, her life has been played out in social media. She's played her life out in social media. She is an influencer. She's really, really gaining so much from her relationship with Liam a year on. And I think that's very unsettling for Liam's family.
So this is a very rare outing for Cheryl. Cheryl has kept herself very much to herself in the last year while she copes with that grief. But she did step out for Nicola Roberts' 40th birthday in London. She also went to see Nicola Roberts in a play called Hadestown. So she is there to support her friends. But I think what's so interesting here is that Cheryl is very rarely seen out and about, where Kate Cassidy, she's regularly seen out and about. We see a lot of her on Instagram, we see a lot of pap shots of her walking around the streets. Where Cheryl, we don't see that from her. We see her only when wants to support her friends or see them on their birthdays.
So Kate agreed to do an interview, and it was for 5 figures, but more than £10,000, which was my understanding. So within that, she was asked to explain why she left him in Buenos Aires. And I think that's definitely a question that the family would like to have answered. She kind of didn't really give an answer. She again said it was the dog. But I think it was quite obvious to those who love Liam that she was being paid for this. And actually, again, the family and Cheryl have remained silent since his death. There's been one Instagram post from Cheryl. His sisters have posted a couple of times. His mother and father have never said a word. So for her to do an interview with a Red Top newspaper in return for a lot of cash, I think was seen as a little bit sickening.
So this is a story that I wrote in August, and it was Cheryl 10 months on from Liam's death. So she hadn't posted anything on Instagram for the 10 months following Liam's death. And when she came back, it was to announce this big Nivea deal. She was the face of Nivea. What's really interesting, I was told by sources that when she was filming this new advert, she insisted that Bear was there with her. She wanted Bear there, she wanted his support, and she wanted them to see what she was up to as she moved on from that kind of grief, where she was making sure that Bear was her #1 priority. In fact, a source close to Cheryl told me that Bear would always be her #1 priority, and she's particularly keen to make sure that Bear is kept away from fame. So although he was on the shoot for this Nivea shoot, he was not part of it, he was not on camera, and she doesn't want him on camera. She's fiercely protective of him, and she made sure that he was part of the day, but not part of the shoot.
So when One Direction split up, Liam wanted to be a star. Liam wanted to have a solo deal. And he had a few hits, but it really did start to peter out. And I think it petered out as his lifestyle became more and more wild. But what he didn't expect was to have this baby at home with Cheryl, who obviously, wasn't particularly tolerant of him flying around the world. So they ended up having this tumultuous relationship, a really tumultuous relationship very early in Bear's life. And then of course, it became too much and they split up. I know Cheryl really, really had to put she put so much into him, trying to keep him on the straight and narrow. It was extremely difficult for her because she's got his little boy that she's desperate for him to have a relationship with. There was a lot of FaceTiming between Bear and Liam. There wasn't an awful lot of contact. I mean, he did move very close to Cheryl and Bear in Buckinghamshire, but he wasn't there much. So their relationship was very much on the phone. But Cheryl really tried to get him the help and get him, because she obviously felt she has a responsibility for her little boy's father, which is very sweet of her. And she is, by all accounts, an exceptionally brilliant mum who must have had to navigate a really tricky time since Liam's death.
I think when we talk about Cheryl being fiercely protective of Bear, we know why. She is only too aware of the pitfalls of fame, and she knows what fame did to Liam. It made him an alcoholic, it made him a drug user, and he talked in his lifetime about how he struggled with fame, and she does not want that for Bear. And what's really interesting here is, yes, she posted about her Nivea deal in August, but actually that was her first Instagram post since Liam had died. Compare that with Kate, who was posting every week about Liam. I think it's a really striking contrast between the two women. And then we come on to this most recent of stories. So on Liam Payne's first anniversary of his death, Kate Cassidy posted something which I thought was very bizarre and distasteful, really. And that was a picture of her and Liam together. Now, this picture was never taken. This is an AI picture that she chose to post on the anniversary of his death. It's a most bizarre behaviour, particularly when you consider just how many photos she has of her and Liam together, and it left his relatives aghast. She was accused of tormenting the late star's family by doing this. In fact, Liam's sister Ruth posted that some people were hoping to gain from Liam's death and become more famous, and people immediately said that that statement was aimed towards Kate in light of these pictures, in light of the fact that she's using AI pictures of her and Liam, even though she's bound to have lots of photos of them together herself. It was really bizarre behaviour by her, and she got a lot of criticism for it.
It's upset the close circle, and look, he did have a solid group of people in the UK who cared about him a lot. People that had worked with him, people that had known him from his earlier life as well. They knew a different Liam. And so when she posted these AI pictures on social media, she was very like, oh, thank you so much. AI, it has its pluses and its negatives, but think of his family, like his friends, like they thought that was so weird. There's enough pictures of her and Liam together over the years. They looked like any other pictures. They looked like a couple who were getting ready to go out. He's in a suit looking dapper. She's in a pretty dress and she's posing and pouting. It just felt a bit sick to his circle. People who knew him and people who cared for him and people, who watched his life spiral out of control. And it felt inappropriate that she did that. So we're seeing a woman who is clearly grieving. And I think it would be unfair to say she's not grieving. But there's also lots of content whereby she seems like she's having rather a good time. So she arrived home just shortly before the anniversary to find lots of parcels, PR freebie parcels, that she looked very excited to go and open. For Liam's anniversary, she went off on a lovely yoga press trip. I mean, I suppose in a way, who can blame her for wanting to get away? You know, she obviously wanted to go somewhere where she could try and, you know, put it out of her mind as much as she could. But it's all kind of littered with these, you know, these grief posts. So I just wonder quite like what the truth is here. You know, I mean, she seems to very much like the attention of the grief posts, but at the same time appears to be very much Liam's death seems to have actually had its, dare I say, advantages to her and her life as an influencer.